Welcome to the Church of Obelisk and to my 731 Lone Druid guide. This video will cover everything you need to know about how to play Lone Druid, who is one of the strongest heroes in the game right now. I've personally gained around 400 MMR in less than a month, mostly playing this hero. Also played some Visage, but that's a topic for another video. So Lone Druid is definitely worth learning right now if you're a mid or a carry player. Here's what we'll cover in this video. First of all, we talk about the abilities and all the important interactions and triggers you need to know, and there's a lot to cover there. Then we look at skill builds and item builds. Next, we'll talk about counters and when you should and when you shouldn't pick Lone Druid. Then we'll cover micro and control groups. And then next is laning, followed by tips on farming and on what to look out for in fights. And then we'll round out the video by talking about the game plan for the mid game and for the late game. And now let's jump right in. Alright, let's talk about Lone Druid's abilities. First of all, let's take a brief look at his stats. Base damage is very low, base armor also quite low, but he moves quite fast, 325, definitely one of the faster heroes. Base stats are nothing special, and stats gain is not the greatest. 2.5 strength gain is pretty good for an edgy hero, 2.8 agi is not the best. Int gain is very low, but doesn't matter because our spells are not expensive. But that's not the important part. The important part really is the bear. So this is our basic ability, summon Spirit Bear, which surprisingly summons a Spirit Bear. Obviously you can only have one bear at a time. If you have an existing bear, casting this again will resummon the bear, but you cannot resummon if your bear is taking damage in the last 3 seconds. Wait a bit and then we can resummon. Whenever you level up the hero, the bear gets bonus damage and bonus HP. It's 5 damage and 90 HP for each level up. There's a bunch of interactions with leveling up this bear, but we're not going to go into that right now. We'll talk about that in detail a little bit later. The basic thing that leveling up the bear does gives you more tankiness mainly, so a lot of extra HP. Some extra HP regen, so it has attack speed, damage, and so on. It benefits from all these sorts of items. They give damage, attack speed, attack modifiers, HP theoretically, although that's not that relevant. Movement speed, things like that are good on the bear, but attribute items are not good. So you're never gonna buy something like a Saint Yasha or a Skadi or something like that. Those items don't make sense on the bear. The bear can pick up any runes and benefits from all of them except for the illusion rune, because bear cannot have illusions. Also, if you get, for whatever reason, if you were to get a manta on the bear, right, you can cast this to disjoint spells, but that's the only thing it does. Any of the other runes work just fine. You can also pick up bounty runes. However, there's one important interaction. If an enemy hero is standing on top of a rune, you cannot pick it up. Right now, I cannot actually click on this. I can only click on the Snapfire with the bear. But with a hero, no problem. The hero, the haste rune gets prioritized. So I can pick it up with the hero, but not with the bear if someone else is standing on top of it. So this is important when you're trying to pick up bounty runes. If an enemy hero is on top of the bounty rune or it spawns, you can never outclick them. It doesn't work for the bear. Another restriction is that the bear cannot use wards. So you can carry these, no problem. You can't actually place them though. You can use dust, no problem. And you can use smoke, also no problem. The bear can also use a stick, which is not an item you usually want to buy on him, but maybe in some niche situations it's possible. You do get these stick charges now. In the past you didn't actually get stick charges on the bear, but nowadays it works just fine. You can buy a gem on the bear, but it doesn't actually work, at least the passive doesn't work. The active component does work, so you can use the active, but the passive component does only works on the hero. You can theoretically buy a rapier on this hero. It's not recommended, but it works just fine. You can also pass it between the hero and the bear if you bought it yourself. But if you pick up an enemy rapier, you can only use it with the unit that picked it up. So if I pick it up with the bear here, I cannot pass it on to the hero. It doesn't work. Another thing to note about the bear is the leash range. You can only attack while you're within 1100 units. And if you are outside that range, this little icon will appear. This sort of broken sword to show you that you cannot actually attack here. That's the kind of range you can attack from. You always have to be fairly close to your hero. If you get an Aghanims, then this restriction gets dropped. So now the bear can attack anywhere. also important to note is that if the hero dies now, the bear doesn't actually die. But now with the Aghanim's, you can still keep going. The bear also has 3 abilities. First one is Return. This is just a teleport to the hero. It's channeled for 3 seconds and has a 30-second cooldown, so it's important not to accidentally interrupt this. You also have the Demolish ability. This gives you 33% spell resistance, which is slightly more than heroes have, and also gives you bonus damage against buildings. Then you have Entangling Claw. This is a 20% proc chance to root an enemy hero, also deals a little bit of damage. And once you get a root off, you have a bit of a downtime where you cannot root again, 5-second cooldown once it actually procs. And once the hero has the ultimate, it's also in that ultimate form gets a stronger version of his abilities. So get the same extra spell resistance on top of the normal 25%. So you just have 49% magic resist here. And you have a little bit more building damage and a higher chance to actually block that entangle with 30%. On top of that, the ultimate gives you a whole bunch of bonus HP and armor. It does have some downsides though. It actually makes your base attack time slower. So normally Lone Druid in ranged form has a 1.6 base attack time, so it's slightly faster than most heroes. But this goes back to the standard 1.7 in the ultimate form. And of course you lose a bunch of range. But still, it's much better in almost all situations to fight in true form because it's just so tanky. It's very hard to kill the hero in true form, especially because of Spirit Link. So what Spirit Link does is it will heal you up. When the bear attacks, it will give you like shared lifesteal, and it only works one way, so only the bear can heal up the hero. It doesn't work the other way around. And in addition, this also gives you bonus attack speed to your hero and the bear. It doesn't work on any other units that you control, only the hero and the bear. And it also gives shared armor. So when you have this maxed out, every point of armor you get on the hero also gives a 0.2 armor on the bear, and every point of armor you get on the bear also gives 0.2 armor on the hero. So armor items are already quite strong for the bear, and this extra ability makes it even slightly stronger. Next we have Savage Roar. What Savage Roar does is you cast it on either the hero or the bear, then it replicates around the other unit as well, and it fears enemy player units, so heroes and also summons or creeps that the players control, but it does not work on lane creeps or neutral creeps. So it forces them to run towards their fountain. Cooldown is shared between the hero and the bear. If one of your units is unable to actually cast it, then it will only be replicated around the main units actually casting it. So right now if I roar, I would fear both the Doom and the Snapfire, but let's say the Doom is my hero. I can still cast it on the hero here, but it will only work around the bear. So Snapfire gets feared, but the Doom does not get feared. However, if I get the shard, it will always roar around both units. So now if I roar, it will fear both here. In addition, the shard also provides a basic dispel to both the hero and the bear. In addition, Savage Roar also gives in 700 radius around both the hero and the bear a kind of super drum charge with 20% movement speed and 60% attack speed. Works for the hero and the bear as well as nearby allies. Now let's talk about the complicated subject of leveling up the bear. So obviously leveling up the bear gives you a bunch of bonus stats, but what it also does is actually it replaces your existing bear with a new one. This is a completely new separate unit, has the same items, but this means you can remove any effects from the bear. So if the bear is affected by anything, whether it's dispellable or not, you can just effectively dispel it by leveling up the bear. This also works for positive effects. So if let's say you have a double damage rune on the bear, if you level it up, it's gonna be gone. You can also level up to dodge projectiles. You can also level up to be able to actually resummon. Right now I can't resummon, but now I can. But because I just got a new bear and it hadn't taken damage yet, I could just resummon it. You can also use level up to reset the cooldowns on the bear. So I use Savage Roar now, right? I level up and I've got all my cooldowns again. This also importantly works for Entangling Claw. So right now I just level up and now I can entangle again. So this is an important aggressive tool. So using a level up strategically is an important part of advanced Lone Druid play. But generally, leveling up to level 2 is something in most lanes you're going to do automatically when it's available. But then the level up to level 3 and level 4 is something you often want to use in specific situations to dispel stuff or get another entangle, things like that. Now let's move on to the skill build. So this is the skill build you would go for in an ideal game. You just max out the bear first and then the spirit link. This is what gives you optimal DPS and farming ability, but it doesn't give you as much safety. So if you're worried about safety, you would put an extra point in Savage Roar somewhere earlier, or extra point in True Form somewhere earlier. And this way you can be safer against kills. So since you often want to be saving up a point in Spirit Bear anyway, oftentimes you can use the saved up point to then put into a Savage Roar True Form if you get in the situation where you actually need that to survive. So this is a great way of combining greed and safety. The ordering on Spirit Bear and Spirit Link is a bit situational. So if you're harassing your hero a lot, you often want to get the point in Spirit Link first. So oftentimes you see this at level 3 where you want to have 1 point in Bear and 2 in Spirit Link if your hero is getting harassed. But this is great if they harass your Bear primarily, because this gives extra tankiness to the Bear. And also this is good if your opponent is not harassing you much and you can actually be aggressive, because then this gives you extra levels in entangle and things like that. So this is better offensively. As far as talents go, level 10 and level 15 is pretty fixed. You always go for health and Savage Roar cooldown. They're just much better than the other ones. At level 20 and level 25, it's a bit more complicated. So I typically go for the True Form cooldown and the True Form health and Spirit Bear health. So these are the more defensive talents. But it's also perfectly viable to go for the aggressive ones with the 0 Entangling Clause cooldown, removes that 5-second cooldown on Entangle, or the -1 Spirit Bear attack time. This is also a powerful aggressive talent, but most of the time I go for these two. Now onto the item builds. So this is usually what I start with. I just get 1 Tango. That's oftentimes enough because you get plenty of region from Spirit Link. But if you do need extra region, definitely do ferry out some more. And then I'll just get some items that help me last hits, because hero has very low base damage, only 40, so getting some slippers is a great way to just increase your last hit damage and give you also a bit of an improvement in terms of trading in lane. And then later on, these are going to be made into Wraith Bands, but we'll talk about that in a second. Of course, if you get a Quelling Blade for the bear. If you're in a lane where you're worried about your bear being harassed a lot, then you want to start with a TP for the bear. So this costs 100 gold, so to make room for that, we get 1 less slipper and replace it with an Iron Branch. And then we can start with the TP. Even if you don't start with a TP, it's still recommended that you get a TP on the bear a little bit later. It's a bit awkward though, because you have to manually ship it out with your courier. So you have to do something like this, where you buy the TP, you drop it onto the bear manually, and then you shift click back your courier into your base. So that can be a bit awkward. So it's a bit easier to just start out with the TP. This is also why you never want to buy region on the bear. You just either resummon the bear or you teleport it back to base to region back up to full. In the early laning stage, we're primarily interested in just securing last hits. So we get Blightstone for some extra DPS for both the hero and the bear. And then we usually start our phase boost with Blades of Attack and then finish it. And when you buy over Venom is a bit situational. Some games you might even skip it completely. But usually you want to buy over Venom a little bit later, because it doesn't help you last hitting, it only helps you harassing. But if you're in a lane where you're pretty confident you can get last hits and you just want to be aggressive, then you can also buy an earlier over Venom. After those basic items, it's time to make a decision. So there's 3 main paths on Lone Druid. You can either go for Deso, for Mjolnir, or for Radiance as your first major damage item. There's also some alternatives. You can also go for an early MKB. This might make sense in a game where there's a lot of evasion. especially if playing his PA, this might be a sensible starting item. And then there's also the outside possibility of doing some sort of hero focus build, where you're just buying items from the hero and just playing as a normal hero where you only buy some minimal items in the bear, maybe like a Blightstone, maybe Overvenom, maybe with Quelling Blade. But these builds tend to be not very strong right now, so I'm not going to cover those in this guide. So which build should you go for? Deso build is great at extending the natural strength of your hero. So the hero is already good at doing single target damage. It's already good at taking down towers, and this is what Desolator enhances. So this is a great tempo item to be able to be strong in the mid game, take all the other towers, secure Roshan, and things like that. Mjolnir build is a bit more farming oriented, so it tends to be better in lower level games, because in lower level games people are worse at farming, there's more farm on the map, and also people are worse at finishing out games, so buying farming items is going to be more important. Typically, I would say if you're like below, let's say 3.5k, I would recommend the Mjolnir build as the default. And if you're above that, I would recommend the Deso build. Radiance is a bit of a wonky build right now, because the problem with Radiance, even though it's very strong in the bear, is that it's such an awkward build-up time. You have to save up for this 3,750 gold item, and that comes right at the time when Lone Druid is really at his strongest. Right, that early mid game is really sort of your big power spike, and if you're buying or if you're saving up for Radiance at this stage, you're kind of throwing away Lone Druid's biggest strength. So that's why we'll typically avoid Radiance build, but there are some situations where Radiance is still the way to go, especially if you're in a game where there's a lot of disable, maybe a lot of disarm, where your bear can't really properly attack. And you can at least buy this to at least get the burn damage. Also, if you're in a game where you can't really hit an early timing anyway, Radiance might be an option. But generally, I would stick with one of those two builds in like 90+% of games. Obviously, both Mjolnir and Radiance offer AoE damage, they offer magic damage. So both these builds are good at dealing with like illusions, zoo builds and stuff like that. But even there, generally Mjolnir is going to be the superior choice. So if you're up against a hero like Naga, for example, just go for the Mjolnir. It's going to be quite good at dealing with those illusions. And also, illusion heroes tend to have a fairly high armor, so having some magic damage from a Mjolnir is great there. Regardless of which build you go for, it's a good idea to get 1 or 2 casual Gloves of Haste. This is just the most efficient attack speed item in the game, and Lone Druid just really likes having attack speed on the bear. And then you go for the Desolator and the Desolator build, obviously. This is great timing, so this is sort of your point of greatest strength when you reach this kind of inventory. After that, you typically want to get the Shard. This is a very powerful Shard, we talked about that earlier already a bit, but you pretty much always want to get the Shard right after your first major damage item. After you shard, it's typically a good idea to get Orb of Corrosion. Orb of Corrosion actually stacks with Desolator, unlike the regular Orb Blightstone. So this is a great way of getting an extra 3 armor reduction. And armor reduction is just a stat that is great to stack up, because armor reduction is most effective when heroes are around 0 armor, and because heroes typically are going to have like way more than 6 armor at this point in the game, getting extra armor reduction on top of your existing armor reduction is very powerful. I see a lot of Lone Druid players, especially in lower levels, get Orb of Corrosion very early on, just early laning stage. This is typically a mistake. So the components of Venom and Blightstone are great in the laning stage, but what does the upgrade actually give you? It gives you an extra 150 health, pretty irrelevant in the bear, and also gives you 1 extra armor reduction, which is not that big, right? Paying, what is it, 350 gold for 1 armor reduction is not really worthwhile. The other thing it also gives you is it saves on slots, which is also not that big of a deal for the Spirit Bear in the beginning. So this is something you want to get a little bit later. At some point, it's not really well defined exactly when, you get boosts of speed. It's just an extra utility to have some more movement speed here. You can maneuver a bit more freely in fights with this. You can get away from danger more freely. Before you get your boots, oftentimes what we see is you sort of passing back and forth your phase boots when you're running a big distance across the map. You'll just have your phase boots on the hero, and then once you get to actually some farming or fighting, you'll put it back on the bear. But at some point it's worth to actually invest into your own pair of boots once we get all the sort of super important items out of the way. Follow-up item is usually going to be a basher. This is a very efficient item on the bear. Even though you don't get the benefit from the strength, you still get on average 50 damage per hit with the proc chance. This is a very efficient item, gives you some extra lockdown on top of the entangling claws. So with this plus entangling claws, it's very hard for opponents to get away from you. So this is a great anti-kiting tool. And then at around 25 minutes, you want to start stacking some Wraith Bands. Wraith Bands double up in effectiveness at 25 minutes. So they're actually a super efficient item to buy. I made a whole video about this. But the long and short of it is that Wraith Band is pretty much the most efficient DPS item you can buy. And so you usually want to buy like 4 or 5 of these. You do want to have Boots of Speed. I would not clog up your entire inventory with 6 Wraith Bands, but getting like 4 or 5 is great. So 4 would be like, if you have Boots plus 1 more item, often going to be like a Dust of Appearance. This still gives you a ton of both DPS and also a ton of armor. And that armor is also going to give some extra armor to the bear via Spirit Link, so that's great. If your farm isn't that good, you can also start buying these Wraith Bands before Skull Basher. It's just not really about the order of the item, more about just the timer. You just start buying these shortly before 25 minutes. And then a great extension item is going to be the AC on the bear. So this is, at this point already we have to replace one of these Gloves of Haste. So this shows you just how efficient these items are. You can keep them in your inventory for a very long time. And even at this point, now we can actually pass them onto our hero and just for 450 gold, upgrade the treads, which is also a very reasonable item to buy. Gives extra tankiness in strength form or extra DPS in agility form, and just a very reasonable upgrade at this stage, especially since we're actually going to be doing a decent amount of DPS with our hero. So that's a build. Now onto the Mjolnir build. In this build, you typically want to get your Mjolnir right away, and oftentimes in this build I will only go for 1 Gloves of Haste, so that we don't delay our shard timing by too much. And also then Mjolnir is going to naturally give us a bunch of attacks anyway. Speaking of the shards, if you really need the shard, let's say you're playing against like a Pugner, for example, who keeps decrepping your bear, and you really need the spell, then you can go ahead and get the shard after the Maelstrom. But ideally you want to finish the Mjolnir and then get the shard. After that is probably time to start stacking some Wraith Bands. Boots of Speed is a good item to get obviously as well. And then we just go again with the Basher and AC. With the Radiance build, it oftentimes can pay to be really greedy and just go for Hand of Midas first, after just like Bitestone and Quelling Blade. If you can get away with this is great. And because you're saving up for this big item anyway, it can often be a good idea here. Just get the Hand of Midas and then maybe just get regular boots so your bear isn't super slow. And then if possible just get straight to the Radiance. But in games we have to actually be doing something, you know, before like 15 minutes or something, you do want to just buy the phase boots and stuff earlier before you get your Midas and your Radiance. You can also skip this Midas. You can just get casual Gloves of Haste and then go straight for Radiance, also perfectly viable. It all depends a bit on how much you need to be strong early on versus how greedy you can be. Then regardless, after your Radiance, obviously you want to finish phase boots if you don't have it already. And then it's time for Aghanim Shard and get like a boots on your hero. And then you start stacking Wraith Bench just normally, and then AC and Skull Basher is going to be the follow-up. Yeah, I put AC before Basher In all these builds, that's a bit of a flex. You can also here get the AC before the Basher. Depends a bit on how much you need armor, how much you need lockdown. But oftentimes in the games where radiance is good, you're not going to be able to attack that freely, so it's oftentimes good to get the AC before the Basher. After these core items you pick from the extension items, if you don't have overcorrosion already, now would be a good time to get it. Solar Crest, also a super strong item to buy on the hero, because this gives a lot of bonuses to your bear. It's 50 attack speed, 10% movement speed, 6 armor. This is quite a lot. You can just keep spamming this on the bear, and the great thing is it doesn't take up any slots on the bear. Obviously MKB is the item you want to go for if you're dealing with evasion. Orchid can also be situationally a strong item on the bear. All the stats it gives us are actually relevant. Even the mana regen is not that bad on the bear, because naturally the bear has a very, very low mana regen, only 0.5, and if you have some active items, you can quickly run out of mana. So this is actually not that bad to have mana regen, but of course gives attack speed, damage, plus the silence. It can be quite a strong item. Nullifier, great item if you're dealing with dispellable stuff, like for example you're playing against Necro, you want to be able to dispel his Ghost Shroud, great item. Also of course great to deal with all these defensive support items like your Glimmer Cape, your Force Staff, all that can be dispelled. You can dispel Yules, you can dispel even an Eon Disc, so Nullifier, a great item, also has great stats on the bear. Moonshard, great item, just attack speed, draw attack speed is great on Spirit Bear, so this is a great item to get in the later stages of the game. At some point, obviously, you want to upgrade your Skull Basher to a Abyssal Blade, great upgrades. Silver Edge can also be viable if there's some sort of passive ability you want to break. The stats that this gives are great, damage, attack speed, but the mobility and initiation stuff is not as relevant on Spirit Bear because you're kind of limited by your hero. But this is a great item to get once you have an Aghanims. BKB, obviously great situational item. If they have a lot of disable, you have to get this. You don't really want to get this on the bear, ideally, but there are many games where you have to kind of get that BKB so you can actually fight. Daedalus is not that great of an item on bear typically, but if you don't need stuff like MKB, there's no evasion, then sometimes just going for the crit here is perfectly viable. And Bloodthorn, if you go for the Orchid earlier, then Bloodthorn is a natural upgrade later on. It does give you a bunch of int, which you can't use, but the other stats are great. Now onto the optional items. These items don't fit in any particular stage of the game, but they're just items you go for in some games, but not in other games. So first we have Mask of Madness. This is an item that a lot of people buy by default, especially if they're going for Deso, but I actually much prefer just getting 2 Gloves of Haste. Mask of Madness obviously gives you a lot of attack speed when you activate it, but it also has significant downtime. So over the long run, actually 2 Gloves of Haste is not even that much less DPS, and it only costs half as much, which means you get an earlier shard, you can get an earlier Deso timing, earlier shard timing. And with this build with double Gloves of Haste Desolator, your shard already comes out at like 18 minutes or something. Like you'd ideally want to get the shard even earlier than that. So delaying it more than that, I don't like that too much. Also just the fact that this costs you so much armor, right? Your bear doesn't have very much armor, right? You have at this stage maybe like 11 armor, and then using this actually puts you at 3 armor. That's so low. So I much prefer just getting 2 Gloves of Haste, but if you're in a game where there's not much physical damage, you think you can get away with Mask of Madness, go for it. This is just here to remind you that buying detection is useful, so if there's any invis on the enemy team, even just a Glimmer Cape, go ahead and buy Dust. Stick and Wand situational item on the hero. If you're in a lane where there's a lot of spam and you're kind of afraid for your life, like for example you're playing against Batrider in lane, go ahead and buy an early Stick or even Wand. And Wand is also great in games where you're against a lot of mana burn. So for example, you're playing against a Phantom Lancer with a Diffu, and he's going to burn you all your mana, but then you just have a couple of wand charges saved up. You can pop your wand and be able to cast Savage Roar or True Form or whatever you need. Blade Mail is a great item to buy in certain situations. Actually a pretty efficient item because it Very cheap. It gives a bunch of damage and armor, which is very relevant on the bear, and can be great against certain heroes. But of course, it's not an item that scales too well in terms of farming, so it's definitely not an every game kind of item. Then we've got Aghanim Scepter. This is an item that allows your bear to attack from anywhere on the map. This is not an item you usually want to buy because it's like 4.2k gold. That doesn't really make your bear directly stronger, but it's an item you go for as like a plan B. This is an item you go for if you're in a game where you're like far behind, you can't really win straight up fights, and you have to resort to ratting. In other games, you just get this item like way in the late game when your bear's 6 slotted. Eon Disc, again, an item you don't want to buy, but if like you find yourself being burst a lot, then this might be an item to buy on the hero. But this is really like a last resort. You really want to just survive by like using your ultimate earlier, by better positioning, things like that. But in some games, you have to go for this item. So now let's imagine that our bear is 6 slotted. You have something like this, for example. Well, what do you do next? Well, one thing you can do is just take this AC, transfer it to the hero. The bear is still going to have the aura, and it's going to at least get like half the benefit or something from AC. Then you can buy another item. Let's say you buy an extra moonshot, for example. But what now? Now you're still 6 slotted. Well, you could consume the moonshot, but that's generally not a good idea. You'd rather just buy some items on the hero. So, for example, you can buy Solar Crest. We talked about that earlier. Great item. It's basically like having an item on the bear that doesn't take up any slots. Other things you can buy, Aghanim Scepter, also great item as a luxury kind of item. We talked about it earlier as well. We can buy Refresher Orb, gives an extra life for the bear, so just resummon your bear again. You can also just buy some random aura items like Vlad's or even Wraith Pact. You can buy Drum or even Boots of Bearing, right? Just some aura items that are good. It also help your bear, help your team. You can just buy Boots of Travel, a strong late game luxury item. You can even buy this on the bear if you're doing a more of a ratting style. You generally don't want to give away the boots from your bear because the bear already gets kited kind of easily. So it's generally you want to hold on to your boots as long as possible. Then other items you can buy, just random utility items. Scythe, why not? You can buy Heaven's Halberd, not a bad item. You can just buy some utility items here to have on your hero. But honestly, you're not really going to get to that stage very often, because Lone Druid is a hero that tends to end games early, and also a hero that can often lose games rather fast, because if you ever die with your bear on a long cooldown, even buyback is not going to save you, and then you can just get raxed or thrown very easily. So Lone Druid is a hero that tends to lend itself towards short games. And even if you do get to this like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 slotted stage, it's not even that strong, because in the very late game, the bear just does not scale as well as regular heroes do. Now let's talk about what heroes Lone Druid is good against and which heroes he struggles against. For that, we look at DotA buff, which has a nice feature which shows you the relative win rate with particular hero combinations. First of all, we have Anti-Mage. Lone Druid hard counters Anti-Mage. You might think, okay, Anti-Mage is very mobile, Lone Druid is not good at catching up to people. But the thing is, you don't need to. Right? Lone Druid can just take your buildings. And as Anti-Mage, while you're still farming up your items, Lone Druid is already bearing down the objectives, taking all the outer towers, taking Roshan, going high ground, and Anti-Mage is just not going to be able to come online in time. Ember Spirit, also a very mobile hero, but again, it doesn't really matter, right? Lone Druid is not going to catch Ember Spirit, but Ember Spirit is also not going to burst down Lone Druid. He doesn't do very much damage to the bear, and Ember Spirit is not able to control the hero enough to really stand up to him. Doom, you can cast Doom on the hero or on the bear, and it doesn't do anything, right? The bear is not going to care about that pure damage because the bear has so much HP. If you Doom the hero, who cares? The bear's still going to be able to heal up the hero. Void, if we get like a chrono on the hero without true form, we can get a kill there. Sure, but for the most part, similar things apply to Void as to Anti-Mage. And if you're just able to cast your true form in time, Basis Void doesn't really do very much. It's hard for Void to beat down the bear. Pudge, you can get your hook blocked by the bear. With Raw, you can always interrupt your ultimate, so Pudge is going to struggle against Lone Druid. Shadow Demon, you cannot create illusions of the bear. So Shadow Demon tends to be bad against Lone Druid. Similar thing for Darkseer, but you cannot create illusions of the bear, and illusions of the hero are going to be quite weak, so these kinds of heroes tend to struggle against Lone Druid. Now let's look at the opposite. Let's look at matchups where Lone Druid struggles. He struggled a lot against Huskar. He's going to be strong in the laning stage. He's got a lot of disarm that gives the bear a lot of trouble, especially as long as you don't have your shard yet. And just in general, Huskar just hits an earlier timing and hits his timing harder, so it's hard for Lone Druid to really get into the game. The problem with Chaos Knight is that he has all these illusions that the bear cannot clear efficiently, and Chaos Knight does so much damage that you just cannot out-heal it properly. With your Aurora, you can make some plays, but in the end, Chaos Knight is just going to have too much damage for you, and it's hard to deal with Chaos Knight. And also, even if you get something like a Mjolnir to try to deal with the illusions, it just doesn't kill him quickly enough. Drow Ranger just has range, and it's hard for Lone Druid to close up to her. You can just kill the bear from range with impunity. Undying, the main thing about Undying is just the Tombstone, right? The bear doesn't do anything against Tombstone, so you can only hit the Tombstone with the hero, which is kind of hard because the hero's not going to have much items. And all that slow from all these zombies is gonna seriously inconvenience the bear. Winter Wyvern has a strong save against Lone Druid. It's not even so much about the ultimate, it's more about the Cold Embrace and about Arctic Burn, which is a pretty powerful slow, and also the percentage-based damage is strong against the bear. Naga Siren, other Elo heroes tend to be good against the bear. Jakira has a lot of slows, and similar for Underlord. All these sort of stuff you can put on the ground that are going to slow down your bear or stun the bear is something that Lone Druid has trouble dealing with. But just in general, Lone Druid is really strong in this patch. Like, even in the worst possible matchup, you still have 45% win rate. This hero is just super strong, and some of these matchups that are technically disadvantaged, but you still have an over 50% win rate against many of these heroes. You should not be afraid too much about counters. You can pick Lone Druid in pretty much every game these days. Now let's talk about micro and control groups. So you can set up control groups in DotA. Here, you can decide what you want to set those control groups as. I just have them as 1, 2, 3, 4, and then as additional control groups over here, which we're not really going to need for Lone Druid. Additionally, there's also the select all controlled units, which is going to be useful, and select hero. And also here under advanced hotkeys, we have select all other units. So these are all features that you can use. So I just use a pretty basic setup. I have 1 for my hero and the bear, and then 2 for just the bear. And then also, in case I get a illusion rune, I have 3 for those illusions. And my hero and bear are not going to be part of that. So oftentimes you're going to be using those illusions for some split pushing. But if I do want to fight with my illusions, I can just use my all controlled units hotkey to control everything, or my all except the hero. Just get the illusions and the bear. And this way we have a lot of flexibility in how we control our units. The way you set up control groups is you just select some units and then you just press Control plus, in this case, 1, for example. Then this is going to be bound onto 1. This is also going to persist in between games, so at some point you can just set up these illusion runes in demo mode, and then when you get those in your game, they're just going to be bound on, in this case, 3. An important aspect of Lone Druid, just with most heroes, is going to be attack moving. So we move, and we hit again, we move, we hit again. And this is going to maximize our damage output against opponents that are running away. And this is especially important with the bear, which has like a little bit of a worse attack animation. but even with the hero, this is quite important. Also, another factor is once you've entangled someone and they can't really move away anymore, then you typically want to move a bit in the direction that they want to flee in to make sure that you can actually get that kill. These sort of small optimizations will help you a lot. If you're in trouble, what you generally want to do is you want to hit with your bear and run away with the hero. You can use Savage as well, and this way you can oftentimes disengage from a situation. But the most important part is whenever your hero is taking damage, you want to be hitting something with a bear so you can heal up and hopefully survive. The most important thing about laning as Lone Druid is just learning how to last hit. At level 1, Lone Druid is a fairly weak hero. You don't really have any proper kill potential. You don't even do that much damage, especially if you're up against a melee hero with a damage block, reducing the damage of both the hero and the bear by 8 on average. This means you're not doing that much damage, but you can still last hit properly. Problem here though is that if you just do this casually, I want to hit this dummy target here, the attacks from the hero and the bear are not going to be properly aligned. You see the hero's attack came in earlier, and it just depends on exactly where your hero is, where your bear is, which direction they're facing, and sometimes the bear's attack is going to be faster than the hero's attack, sometimes the other way around. So how do you actually align those attacks properly? So one thing you can do is just have both the hero and the bear fairly close here, and then just right click. They're going to land at roughly the same time. This of course is a bit dangerous, puts the hero close to the enemy. So what you can do is, if your hero is at a safe distance here, you actually have your bear purposefully face a different direction, and then this will roughly align the attacks. I've made a whole video about that, which is linked up in the top right, so go watch that. One of the important things to know about Lone Druid is to know when you're supposed to level up your bear and when not. So if you're up against a hero that has a lot of debuffs that they put on the bear, so for example, you're playing against a Bat Rider or against a Huskar, it's almost always worth saving the level up and then just level up your bear when there's a lot of debuffs on the bear, and this can also be used to be able to actually resummon. But in other matchups, you just, especially level 2 is something you in most matchups just level up right away, just because the level 2 bear is quite a bit stronger than the level 1 bear. But then level up from 2 to 3 is something you often, even in lanes where you don't need to dispel anything, you keep this to have some aggressive potential, because now we're getting in the sort of timings where we can actually potentially get a kill here with an entangle plus level up, entangle again if you have a little bit of luck. So that's something you can often do. And obviously I talked already earlier about if you need more regen on the hero, you level up Spirit Link before. If you really need some get out of jail free card, you level up Savage Draw. And once you're up to like level 5, 6, 7, you can actually start being more aggressive. You're going to have a lot of regen here from the bear attacking things, and then you should have a better time. But it's just important in the early couple of levels, just focus on last hits and denies, and then once you level 6, 7, something like that, you can maybe even get a kill on the enemy hero. So we're done with the laning stage now. What comes next? Well, of course you want to farm. You want to hit that item timing for your Desolator or whatever other big damage item you want to go for first. One way of doing that is just by pushing towers. This is great at this stage of the game. Lone Druid is quite strong, so you can just push towers with your team or on your own if the enemy team is not nearby. So especially if you have like a level in Savage Draw and you are quite resistant to ganks, it's hard to actually gank Lone Druid. And of course you can take down towers fairly quickly, even before you're Desolated, because you have all that bonus damage from your Demolish. But if you don't feel safe hitting towers, you can just push out waves and then go farm some jungle camps. So when you do that, always you want to make sure that you can actually get the last hits. So do it quickly, but get the last hits, and then you can just hit jungle camps. You don't want to be jungling too much on Lone Druid, but especially when you're getting that next item timing, it's perfectly fine to do some jungling. Watch out for stacks and such. We don't want to be blocking that camp, so we can farm this camp again here and then go for the next one. Notice I'm already kind of positioning my hero a bit farther away, so I can start taking the next camp, using my phase boots for some extra movement speed. In Tangler Creep, you can move slightly back so it stops hitting you, because creeps have less range than the bear. And then you just go on to the next camp. You don't want to be in the jungle too much. You primarily, of course, want to be pushing out the waves, but jungle farm is nice to supplement your income. When you're dealing with tough camps like this stack camp here or with ancient camps, it's often a good idea to try to tank with your hero, and your hero is going to be healed up quite rapidly from the bear, so this makes a lot of sense. And also you generally want to be focusing the same creep with the hero and with your bear so that you can get the full benefit of your Blightstone. But if you're just doing normal camps, it's generally not worth the extra time it requires to just tank with your hero. Just tank with the bear, take a little bit of damage. And if your bear does get low, you can just teleport it back to base. When you're covering long distance in farming, it's great to just pass over your phase boots to your hero so that you can move a bit faster. Your bear is naturally quite fast, so he should be able to be fine here. And then of course, once you're actually doing the camps, you want those phase boots back on your bear. Again, I'm going to try to tank here with my hero, and this way I can do the strong camp without taking too much damage on my bear, and my hero is going to get healed up here over time. If you have a Mjolnir or a Radiance, you can also just use your bear to push out waves like this. Just let them hit you with the Mjolnir active. And of course with Radiance, same idea, you just use the Radiance burn to kill creep waves. With Radiance is even better than this. You cannot aggro jungle creeps like this because you can actually attack. But if it's at day, you can just walk right into a creep camp and then have them attack you. But at night, this is not possible. But of course with Radiance it's still possible. It's not the fastest way of farming, but it's a very safe way of farming if you have a resummon. If you don't have a resummon, this is quite risky. Fighting as Lone Druid is all about managing your HP. Your HP from the bear as well as your hero's HP. If your hero's HP gets low, you need to retreat, and often using Savage Roar to disengage. You can also use True Form if you don't have it already. And when your bear's HP gets low, if you don't have a resummon, you need to retreat with your bear, try to TP it back, and then join the fight again. Outside of those parameters, it's just about hitting whatever you can for the most part. Because Spirit Bear is a melee unit, not the most mobility, you generally just have to hit whatever is closest, although obviously hitting squishy targets is easier. So here we have a bit of a fight in mid lane. I've done quite well in my lane so far. I'm 2-0, so we're quite strong here, and Primal Beast kind of thrown us out of position, so we engage him. I hit him. I see this coming in, so I actually True Form here slightly too late. I should have True Form a bit earlier here, but I do True Form here eventually, and this way we can actually fight. I'm also buffed up here by the Grimstroke with his Inkswell, so I'm going to stay here in the fight against this Husker. And once you're in melee form, you're actually super tanky, right? I have so much armor here and so much HP. I'm at half HP, but I still have 1100 HP. So I'm still super tanky here, and you can just fight and kill this Husker. And here I use Savage Roar so they can't armor toggle at the end. Here's an example of what not to do. I'm just TPing home my bear. Of course, this is good. Just had a fight where nothing really died, so TP home my bear, heal it up, and then it's important that before your bear is actually fully healed, you TP it back, because it's going to TP for 3 seconds. Fountain region also lingers for a second or two after leaving Fountain, so you need to TP this back to you when it is almost healed. Another fight here. My team is fighting without me because my TP is in cooldown, so to get back to my team faster, I pass my phase boots onto my hero, get a little bit faster here, and then when we're close, I pass back the boots to my bear, and then we can fight again. So as soon as the fight actually starts, I use True Form here. Could have even used it a second earlier here. And I don't get a kill here on Primal Beast, but we recognize that Roshan is quite low because Husk has been Roshing. So we can just go in here and Rosh. Super important to realize when you can Rosh. And when you're Roshing, you want to be tanking with your hero typically, because your hero is just going to heal up from the damage that the bear does. And now we find a free check hero here. Maybe you can get a kill here. This, in this case, doesn't result in a kill, but it's important just to get these attacks in, because if I did get an entangle here, this might have been a kill. In this game, after having a very good start, I actually died a couple of times, so my Radiance here is very late. I'm going for Radiance this game, but now that I have Radiance, I have a strong timing, and so I want to fight, and we take down a hero there. Tower is very low, I see that, so I kill the tower first before this support Primal Beast. Not that important, but since I recognize fight is going on, I use ultimate for safety, and now I can just pound these people from melee form. And we see that more heroes are here, so we want to fight if possible, and even get a region rune here on the bear. Remember, bear can use all the runes except for Ilu runes, and when you're in melee form, you don't need to be afraid. You can just go in there and smack people. I have 2.4k HP right now, I've got 18 armor, and I've got 49% magic resist, right? They're not killing me, at least not easily. And also being constantly healed by my bear, so I can just be in the middle of the fight with my hero, and this Husker foolishly jumps onto me, and we just keep smacking people. And in this case, the enemy team just completely overestimated their strength here, and we get an easy wipe. In this game, I lost laning as a Bat Rider, so he's just running at me. He's quite stronger than me right now, so I just need to use Fear. And notice while I'm running, I'm also hitting him here with my bat to put some damage onto him and sort of zone him a little bit. And I just keep running because I know that this Bat Rider can catch up with me. He has a haste rune, so again, I keep hitting him. Maybe I entangle him there, then I'm safe, but no luck here. So since I know I can't escape, I use True Form and try to hit him with my bear as much as possible while I'm leashed up here. I no longer have a roar, unfortunately. I do have the one, so I use it now. And at this stage, I can't really run. So I might as well just hit the Bat Rider with everything, because this Night Stalker and Bat Rider are both faster than me. But I still have actually 460 HP. It's important to realize that you are extremely tanky in melee form, so don't be too afraid. This is only 2 heroes. So I just hit Bat Rider. This is actually a really bad swap from Venge. Actually would be much safer for me to be here, because this makes me at higher risk of dying from Night Stalker. But it doesn't matter here. So here I run away with my hero, Bear attacks. Bear still has 620 HP. Bear is quite tanky. I can hit him here, and I do have. I actually don't have a resummon, so I actually can't afford to lose this bear. Also, I'm super low, so I would actually die if my bear died right now. So this is a pretty precarious situation here for me. But the rest of my team is coming in, so I just need to buy some time. And hitting this guy with my bear is going to heal up my hero, and he's going to try to kill my hero. So I barely survive here. Very close, but a very successful fight here. And this is sort of the fight where we really turn this game around, and from here on out this game gets a lot easier after this very rough start. Note that this successful fight here was only possible because I was playing so carefully. I knew I was way weaker than Bat, so I knew I had to run way back, and this sort of forces the Bat Rider either to go back with his haste rune or to engage really, really deeply, and then this was when we could actually punish them. Let's talk about the mid game now. So I would define the mid game as the beginning when you finish your first major damage item. So when you finish your Desolator, your Mjolnir, or your Radiance. And this is when you actually want to be actively looking for fights. Early on, you of course still fight opportunistically, but this is the time when you're really looking to fight. You're looking to push down all the other towers, any remaining tier 1 towers that are still up there. You want to group up with your team. Destroy those towers. As you can see, you can destroy these towers really, really quickly here. Then, when you've taken a couple of other towers, you want to take Roche. Ideally, you get a kill or 2 before that, but just in general, this hero can do Roche quite well. I mean, right now it's in demo mode here, this very weak Roshan of 3 minutes. So I could easily solo this. Obviously, at this stage you actually have those items, you're not going to be able to do this as quickly as this. And generally it's not a good idea to solo Roshan as Lone Druid because it takes a long time, but you can do it. But of course, ideally you want to Roshan together with your team, and typically you don't really want to take the Rosh. It's better to have another core take it. But if there's no other core that's good Aegis carry, you can also take it yourself, and you can play very aggressively, especially in true form, and sort of tank everything. But the general game plan in the mid game is just fight a lot with your team, take the outer towers, take outposts, take Roshan, and then go high ground. This hero is actually quite good at going high ground, even early. When you go high ground, you need to make sure that you actually have a resummon available. Otherwise, you generally don't want to go high ground, unless, of course, there's a lot of people dead or whatever. But just going high ground is something you can do if you have a resummon available, and then you can just get a good chunk of damage onto a tower, even if the enemy team is there, and then you just resummon and do the same thing again in a minute or two. I would consider late game to begin when you finished your basic build. So you've got something like these items, and at this stage of the game, your bear sort of has the last peak of strength. Of course, you can still get more items than this. This is not a final build, but from this point onward, your bear is going to start to fall off. So at this stage of the game, you typically want to be finishing the game. If you don't manage to finish the game soon after completing this basic build, things usually get very hard. Because while in the ultra late game, yes, you do have 12 slots, you don't really scale all that well with your bear. Your bear does level up a bit with your hero level ups, get a bit of extra HP and damage, but it does not really compare with the true scaling you get from attribute bonuses that heroes get. Alright, these are all the basic things I can tell you about Lone Druid. Of course, I cannot cover everything in any one video, so I'm going to be making more videos on Lone Druid in the future. Already planning to make a video covering the losses I had in my recent games. I'm very successful with Lone Druid, but still over the last 20 games I lost 6, so I'm going to take a look at those games. It's going to be probably the next video here on this channel, so if you don't want to miss that, make sure you subscribe, and Obelisk willing, I will see you there.